Hello and welcome to another episode of the Maxi-Geek Show. Today is Friday, February 3rd, and this is episode number 47. After the Xbox Direct last week, this was always going to feel like a quieter one, but it seems that most companies didn't get that message. We had a number of game reveals and a number of cancellations and delays, and out of nowhere DC unveiled their lineup of their new universe. As this is the first episode of the month, we will also go through the games coming to both Xbox Games with Gold and PlayStation Plus Essentials, as well as rounding out with the bigger games releasing this month. First up though, it's time to play ball as MLB The Show 23 has been announced and is once again coming to all platforms. As you can see, MLB The Show 23, it's the annual sports game from PlayStation Studios. They've been making this series since 2006 now. Back then it was, PS3 related, then, PS4, now PS5. Last year, 2 years ago, the series came to Xbox, and then last year it also came to Switch. This year, it is again hitting all platforms, so it will be launching on PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and Nintendo Switch on March 27th. This year, the cover athlete is Miami Marlins Jazz Chisholm Jr. As you can see here, they did the cover athlete reveal. Now, the MLB series, they tend to drip feed out their information. So this was announced at the start of the week. Overnight, they announced that Derek Jeter is going to be the cover athlete for the Collector's Edition or the Digital Deluxe Edition. There's also an American Exclusive Edition, but we won't go into that. But yeah, so they tend to drip feed out information. We know, for example, that on the 15th of February, so a week and change from now, there will be a technical test going for about a week. The only catch with that is you need to have an American account on your platform. So for your Switch, you could just change the region to the US on your account. PlayStation, slightly more difficult. Xbox, generally you can just change the region of the console. But that'll give you a chance to test out the game. Now, even though they've announced the game, pre-orders are not open yet. They also limit pre-orders. They do things quite weird with this series, but we do know that it will support cross-platform play and cross-saves. So if you do happen to get the PlayStation 4 version and the Switch version, for example, you can have the PS4 version at home on your big TV and the Switch version when you're out and about. What is interesting is, even though there's a temporary page on the PlayStation Store for the game, it's the Nintendo Store that actually has the first screens. Now, again, this is the Switch version of the game, so do note the last generation visuals. So MLB The Show 2022 is already on Switch. It plays incredibly well. It's very, very smooth. Visually it has issues. There's no denying that. But it does play very, very well. So I suspect that this game's going to be very much the same. We do know that if you do get the deluxe or the digital deluxe edition, you will get 3 days early access. So you'll get access on the 24th of March. And then if you do have it on Xbox, if you do have an Xbox and you have a Game Pass subscription, it will also be available in there. Obviously, this is not going to be a cup of tea for everyone because it is, American sport. It is the only, realistic baseball game around. So if you do want to check it out, this is the only way you can do it. As I said, it will be out on the 27th, 28th, depending on digital unlocks. Hey tabs, yeah. So yeah, the game is on Game Pass. It launched on Game Pass back in 2021. So when MLB The Show 21 released on Xbox, it launched straight into Game Pass. Then last year it was on Game Pass as well, and it's back again this year. We haven't heard anything if PlayStation Plus Deluxe members, the big tier, if they're getting access to the game for free to sort of match the Game Pass subscription. Who knows? In terms of the cross progression, as long as you have online for both consoles, you can transfer your information across without any issues. The only feature that Switch, PS4, and Xbox One players will not be able to access is the Stadium Creator. That is exclusive to the next gen or the current gen console, so PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. You will not be able to play on those consoles. So you can't create it on your PlayStation 5 and then transfer it to your Switch. It will not work. But other than that, so the teams, the rosters, stats, all that sort of stuff, everything will transfer across. It's just the stadium creator that's not there. So big news if you're an MLB fan. Moving away from realistic things and heading into the world of fantasy, Disgaea 7 was announced during the week. So Disgaea 7 Vows of the Virtualists was announced last year for Japan. Now, NIS America confirmed during the week that it is coming to the West. You are correct, Tabs. People will. I like the MLB series. Disgaea 7 Vows of the Virtualist is coming later this year to Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and PC. They did release a new trailer for it, which is in there. They have got a bunch of screens here, but these are all from the Japanese release. They're not translated yet into English, but it does give a cool sense of sort of the style that they're going for. So Disgaea 5 was the last one that kept the sort of 2D cutout animation look for everything. Disgaea 6 is when they went to the 3D style, and you can see that they're returning to that now. Obviously, they've still got the the cutouts that they tend to do for any sort of Japanese game. They have characters sort of standing there and just bouncing around, but the actual combat and exploring the world, that'll all be in 3D. There isn't a set date for it yet, for when it will come. It's just later this year. We do know that it will have a collector's edition in North America. There hasn't been a confirmation on that arriving here in Australia at this time, but given that we generally seem to get most of those editions as well, it wouldn't surprise me if that does get confirmed at some point. The other half of the announcements from the NIS America 30th anniversary stream was that Rhapsody Mile Kingdom Chronicles is bringing 2 of the games from the series to the West for the first time. So Rhapsody Mile Kingdom Chronicles is a series that's been very big in Japan for a number of years. It did release on the Super Nintendo or the Super Famicom back in the day. The first Rhapsody game was actually released here in Australia last year as part of the Prinny Presents Classics series. I did put the name down here somewhere. Prinny Presents NIS Classics Volume 3. So the Classic Volume series collections include 2 games in them. So Volume 3 includes the first game. This is now... That game was already released in English. It had been, adapted and everything previously. They just brought it to Switch. But now this is the first time that these 2 games... So basically that was Rhapsody... Last year was Rhapsody 1. Rhapsody 2 and 3 are now coming. So the full title of the one last year is Rhapsody: A Musical Adventure. The second one is Rhapsody 2: Ballad of the Little Princess. And then the third game is called Rhapsody 3: Memories of Mile Kingdom. So they do, as I said, have the trailer. I have a bunch of screenshots here for it as well. It's a very unique looking RPG. It sort of reminds me of cross between, say, Final Fantasy and Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. In that, it's a bit more of a 3D world, but it still has, a very pixelated look to it all. Obviously, this is, touched up a little bit from the original release. I know you can see, obviously, with the third game, they went, on PlayStation, they went to a full sort of 3D world with the, the stylized characters. Probably the best way I can describe it is it's probably a little bit more of the HD 2D that we've seen from Square Enix. This is, something like that. Obviously, this is not HD. This is, ancient, but it looks very cool. It's one of those ones where if you are a fan of that style of old school RPG, or you're a fan of that series, you're probably going to get a lot more enjoyment out of it than if you're coming in fresh. We do know that the collection is coming to Switch and PlayStation 5 later in the year. We know this one's aiming for a winter release. So that could be anywhere from, June 1st to September 30. August 31st. We don't have an exact date, but that's generally the window. On Switch and PlayStation 5, it is a collection. You get both games. On PC, both games are being released, but it's not a collection. So if you only want the one game, you can buy the one game. If you want the other game, you can buy it. The price difference shouldn't be anything. They should be the same price, as if you're buying them in a bundle. But they're just not being released as a bundle. No reason was given to that. It's just what they've decided to do. Another game that was announced during the week is the next entry in the Crew series from Ubisoft. So the Crew Motorfest is the third game in the series following on from 2014's The Crew and 2018's The Crew 2. Unfortunately, they're still in America. So the first 2 games were set on the continental United States of America, which really surprised a lot of people when they announced the second game on the same map. But the Crew Motorfest is actually set on Oahu in Hawaii. So if you're an old gamer like me, you played Test Drive Unlimited back in the day, which they used satellite data to create the island of Oahu for driving. This is the same thing. I'll just throw this teaser on here. But this is the same basic thing. So it is the entire Crew, experience. So the races on the road, off the road, showcase events, all that sort of stuff. It's now just set on a tropical island instead of, the United States of America, the continental part. I have to sort of specify that part because some people, if I say this is not the United States, people get confused. But yeah, so we know it's coming towards the end of the year. Again, with this one, there's no exact release date, just 2023. We do know that there is an insiders program where people can register to join it. If they are accepted, they will get early access to start playing the builds of the game as development continues. And the basic gist is you'll provide feedback, to say, hey, this thing didn't work for me. I don't like that. This is amazing. Whatever the feedback happens to be, you'll be able to provide it, and the team will take that on board. This is something that Ubisoft's been doing for a number of years now. We know Skull and Bones has an insider program. Beyond Good and Evil 2 has an insider program. So it's really great to see them doing it. What is strange to me, though, is that the game is coming to Xbox Series, consoles, PlayStation 5 and PC, but it's also going to Xbox One and PlayStation 4. I honestly thought that maybe, for the next entry in the series, they dropped last-gen consoles, but it seems that's not to be the case. Who knows what will happen. I honestly, looking at the trailer for this and looking at the screens that they've released, which, they're not a lot yet, I do get, mad Forza Horizon 5 vibes, with the city streets and the dirt roads and the beaches. It may not be that way, and it may not feel that way once you're actually playing it, because it is a bit more of a realistic racing game, but we'll have to wait and see. Interestingly, the only thing they haven't confirmed for this one is if there will be any, vehicle manipulation like there was in the Crew 2. So in the Crew 2, at any point, once you had them unlocked, you could swap to a plane and take to the sky, or if you're going towards a river, you could change to a boat and speed along the waterways. There's been nothing about that announced as yet. What we do know is that it'll be the full, island of Oahu. There will be, dirt-based racing. There will be, beach-based racing and road-based racing. We don't know much about that. We do know it will offer full multiplayer. So if you do have, a crew to play with, you'll be able to jump in and do that as well. And then, they're set to offer a few hundred vehicles at launch. Given, with the Crew 2 that just launched a couple of weeks ago, it's Season 2 of Year 7. Episode 2 of Season 7. They name them weirdly. That added more cars. So they keep adding cars in their season. So whatever the list, the number of cars at launch happens to be, give it a few years and it'll probably double. Speaking of doubling, we actually have some news on Star Wars Visions Volume 2. Not really doubling in a sense, but there was a Volume 1. This is now Volume 2. But we actually got the release date for Star Wars Visions Volume 2, and that will be May 4th. So on the, Star Wars Day is when the next chapter of the Visions animated series will release. And while we don't have any information or a trailer, the image that you're seeing on screen is actually from Season 1. We do actually have the list of studios that are creating content for, Star Wars Visions Volume 2. So the first collection was mostly Japanese studios. I think there were 8 Japanese studios and then 1 in the US. For this one, we have Alguri in Spain, Cartoon Saloon from Ireland, Punk Robot in Chile, Aardman Studios, they're the guys that did Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Run and all that, from the United Kingdom, Studio Mer from South Korea, Studio La Cachette in France, 88 Pictures from India, Dart Shitejo in Japan, and Triggerfish in South Africa. I apologize for butchering those names. We do know that Shitejo, the one over here, they're actually doing theirs in consultation with Lucasfilm Direct. So who knows what that storyline happens to be. We did get a quote from the producer of it. That was sort of my first thought too, we might get a thing. So we did actually get the title of all the shows. So for example, the Aardman Studios, it is called I Am Your Mother, and is directed by Magdalena Osinska. So we actually have information on the directors. So Magdalena, she did some Wallace and Gromit shorts early on. She also directed films The Spirits of the Piano and Zygmunt's Cupboard. So she's done a few things over the years, and then it all goes into detail. But as I said, we don't know anything about the actual shorts themselves. We have the names, but that's all we have. Given that the Disney Plus sort of cycle of information tends to be they only put a trailer out about 2 months out from release now, to start building up the hype as a release date gets closer. I wouldn't expect to see a trailer until early March. Star Wars Celebration is happening sometime this year in London. I'm not sure of the exact date off the top of my head. If it's before the debut of the show, we might see something from it there, but otherwise, sort of the early week in March, we will probably see a trailer for this one. The first one was quite a good collection of shorts. Some of them, were packed with talent that you would recognize the names. Most of them were quite short or very stylized, so took a moment to sort of adapt to them. But I think they were wonderful shorts across the board. Unfortunately, with good Star Wars news, we have to talk about the bad Star Wars news, and that is that Star Wars Jedi Survivor has been delayed. So the delay isn't a big one for this one. It's slipping 6 weeks from its mid-March release to late April. So the game was set to release on March 17th, but it will now release on April 28th. So it's about 6 weeks later. The news was released via Twitter just before the EA earnings call that took place during the week. Basically, they've said, so Stig and the team from Respawn Entertainment have said, the next chapter of the Tale of Cal Kestis is content complete. We're now focused entirely on the final stages, bug fixes to enhance performance, stability, polish, and most importantly, the player experience. So they basically just need some more time to polish things up. Now, this isn't, a bad thing because, the game's been dated once and has now been delayed for it. What is interesting is, I've seen some people compare, delaying this, really popular game that people want to the delay of Skull and Bones. How people are angry at Skull and Bones being delayed, but they're not angry at this being delayed. Obviously, the difference there is Skull and Bones has had, 6 or 7 delays at this point, whereas, this has had 1. And this one is, it's not, they haven't delayed it again to an unknown date in the future. They've delayed it 6 additional weeks. It is interesting, that they sort of delayed it purely for content, polishing. But Respawn Entertainment, they generally ship games that don't have many issues. So if they realize they needed a bit more time to do it, I'm more than happy for them to take it. The only thing that sort of makes me upset about the delay in this one is that it does butt right up against the release of Redfall, which also that butts up against the release of Zelda. And then depending on when Starfield releases, if they still are aiming for, by June 12, like they were promised, that could release at the end of May. So we could go from having Star Wars at the end of April to Redfall at the start of May, Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom in the middle of May, Starfield at the end of May, and then Final Fantasy 16 at the end of June. So it could be an extremely packed, 10 weeks of the year, especially with, Street Fighter 6 in there and a bunch of other games. So it is interesting, but hopefully hopefully everything turns out well. The other news that we got from EA during the week is that they've cancelled a bunch of games. So during the week, they confirmed the cancellation of both the Apex Legends mobile game and Battlefield Mobile. Now, the mobile version of Apex Legends actually launched last year and has been out for about 8 months at this point. It's still technically playable and will be playable for a few more months before they officially shut it down. The reason why they decided to cancel it is just because the quality wasn't there from the players. They weren't happy with the overall experience. I got to play it early. I played it on my phone a fair bit when it first launched, and I was enjoying it. But I'm not a mobile gamer. I prefer to have an actual controller in my hands, so that's why I sort of gave up on it. What is interesting about the mobile version is there is mobile exclusive characters. So many people are hoping that does come across to the main console version or the main PC console version of the game, but there's been no word on that yet. Interestingly though, even though Respawn Entertainment were overseeing development of this one, the actual building of it was done by Tencent Games out of China, so it's quite interesting. Battlefield Mobile, however, is the sad one because this game actually hadn't launched yet. It had a few beta periods last year in India, and the Philippines, Malaysia. So there is plenty of footage out there from that. And the studio Industrial Toys that EA bought a number of years ago, back in 2018, specifically to get them to work on the Battlefield game on mobile, they've now been closed. So they, cancelled development of it, cancelled the release plans of it, and shuttered the studio, in one fell swoop. The studio at the last reported count only had about 20-25 staff. They may have more now, being that most mobile companies do run on the smaller side of staff numbers. It may not be 100 people or anything like that, but it's still sad news. Mostly because they had released a couple of mobile games previous to their acquisition by EA that were very well received, and yeah, they've they weren't told they could now work on something else, or hey, we're gonna try and find a buyer for you or anything. It's just no, shutting the studio, you don't have jobs. Obviously that's not the case. They will try and find roles internally inside of EA, but they also, reports came out, the day after all this news that there was another Titanfall game in development at Respawn that has now since been cancelled, and the 50 or so staff that were working on that have now been moved on to other projects, or made redundant. So it's obviously not a good week for EA. They're cancelling games, as if they were Ubisoft at this point. So obviously though, the reason that Battlefield Mobile got shuttered, the actual reason they gave us was because when they started development of this, Battlefield 2042 hadn't released, but now that it's been out and they're attempting to fix all the mistakes they made by making unnecessary changes, the Vince Zampella, who's the co-founder of Respawn Entertainment, he was the co-founder of Infinity Ward and the creator of Medal of Honor back in the day, he's overseeing the Battlefield series now, and the basic decision is that they have they're adapting a new Battlefield approach to sort of streamline the series, and the mobile game just didn't really fit into that because it was very old school in its approach. So they actually hired last year the guy who was sort of overseeing the Call of Duty stuff for Activision, the mobile games and all that. He got hired to oversee Battlefield, so it could be something that they realized they needed to make a change of, but for now it's just sad news. Unfortunately, with game delays and cancellations, the news doesn't stop there, because we got word today that Knockout City is also shutting down later in the year. So Knockout City was an EA Originals game, so this is another EA title that is shutting down. This is a live service game, so they've been releasing seasons pretty consistently, and Season 9 is just about to launch. It'll be the last season that the game does have, and once June 6 rolls around, the servers will be turned off and the game will become unplayable. Until that point, the game is completely playable. There's nothing stopping you from jumping on and playing it, and it is entirely free to play now, so there's no upfront purchase price or anything for it. There is a nice video here from the game's director, Jeremy Russo, about why it's being cancelled. The basic gist of it is they just realized it was time. They have changed as a studio, and as part of that change they realized that they needed to do something different, and they couldn't support Knockout City and do their next project at the same time, so they made the tough decision to close the game. The reason why this is sort of especially hard is they literally just finished migration of their online servers last month. So in January they started doing it, moving everything from the EA platform, which is where it was when it was published by EA, to the Epic Games platform. So yeah, they literally just spent all this time migrating accounts, migrating profiles, user data, and all the code had to get reworked for the network side of things for the game, and now not even a month later they're canceling the game. If you do have time, I do suggest giving that video a watch. It is, it's kind of heartbreaking to hear why it's being closed down, but that is unfortunately the nature of the industry. Live service games, refunds are available as well. There are some restrictions on that. It is on the website. I did have a link in the story, so you can get all the information about that. There is a much more detailed technical blog post for it. Live service games, this is the problem that the video game industry has, is everyone wants a live service game because it is cheaper to keep it going the longer you keep it going. Right, it's the same as if you rented a car every day, at $100 a day. By the end of the first week, you've paid $700, right? By the end of your year, you've paid, many thousands of dollars. But if you buy a car, your repayments might be $250 a week. It might take, it takes you a number of years to pay it off, but the actual, cost of over that time is much cheaper than doing it short term. So that's why games like, For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege from Ubisoft are still being supported, some 6+ years after they were released. It's why World of Warcraft is still going. It's why Fortnite is popular as it is. These games don't take much to maintain, and investment into new content within them is a fraction of the price that it is compared to investing in a new title altogether. So whenever a new live service game is announced, that sounds great for the developer, it sounds great for the publisher of it. The problem is there are so many games already that fit that model that it's very hard to break into the market. During the week, we also got word that Rumbleverse, which was the melee fighting free-to-play game from Iron Galaxy, that is being closed down as well, effective immediately. So there's just so many free-to-play games around these days, and it's like a new social media platform. When Facebook first launched, people were on MySpace, people didn't want to move to Facebook, but eventually some people started doing it and it gained popularity. Right now, everyone's on Fortnite. That's the big free-to-play game, it's the big free live service game. And getting people to move away from that means you have to have a game that is better than Fortnite, that offers more than Fortnite. And considering they keep updating Fortnite, it's highly unlikely that's going to happen anytime soon. Mostly because game companies at the moment don't want to invest in a new IP if they don't know that it's going to make them money. So anytime a new live service game is announced, there's always that whole, will it do well enough to bring people in? There was a game years ago from a studio called Boss Key Games. It was Cliff Bleszinski's new studio. It didn't last past 2 months before they shuttered it and closed the studio because it just couldn't get the players. So we've seen it with PUBG. That's losing players. So it happens all the time, and it's unfortunate, but it is a byproduct of the industry now. That's it. Perhaps like you have to come up with an idea first. So I give Rainbow Six Siege grief because it's not a true Rainbow Six game to me. It's just a generic shooter that has a few tactical elements, and even those are extremely light. But that was successful after they launched it. It launched in an abysmal state. People bombed it. It did not do well. But Ubisoft thought, hey, we can fix this. So they, made a whole bunch of changes really quickly. And then they spent the next sort of year refining everything again. And people now love it. People, tune in to watch esports competitions for it all the time. But that game got attention because it was a Rainbow Six game. It was attached to that brand. So coming up with a whole new IP, is very challenging. But then coming up with a genre that fits the IP is even more challenging. So attaching things to an existing brand is a lot easier. It's why we have so many Mario spin-offs. If Nintendo just announced a new 3D platformer tomorrow and it had nothing to do with Mario, it was completely original, okay, people might like that one because it's Nintendo, but it would have that comparison. Okay, is this better than a Mario game, right? If it is, why is it better? If it's not, why did it fail, Whereas Nintendo announced a new Mario platformer, people would just be like, done, I'm in, it's a Mario platformer. So yeah, anytime there's a new game announced, there's a whole thing around it, but anytime it's a new live service game, there's always a concern that if you invest your time and effort into this, will it be around 6 months from now? Will it be around 2 years from now? Knockout City made it 2 years. Rumbleverse barely made 6 months. It's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But yeah, so live service games are challenging, and then again, there's so many of them. If I play one game and my mates play another game, I might be enjoying my game, they might be enjoying their game, but we can't play together because we're playing different games. That is a horrible thought, Tabs. But yeah, so there's a lot going on with these decisions. They don't make them just at the drop of a hat. There are pros and cons to keeping a game going and shutting it down. And again, there are refunds to be made, refunds to be issued for games as well, especially because a lot of these games are free to play, so you have to pay money to earn, to get digital currency to buy in-game items, all that sort of stuff. So there's a whole side to it there we're not going to get into now, but yeah, it's just a bit of a shame that we've had all these sort of cancellations this week, when they seem to be doing well. But yeah. Moving on from the sad news, we're going to get to some pretty amazing news, and that is that the PlayStation 5 is getting a bunch of new features that are fan requested. So, yesterday, PlayStation announced the beta rollout of the next system update for the PlayStation 5 console. Now, again, this is a beta update, so it's not going out to everyone. It's going out to selected, randomly selected members within the beta program. But it'll actually add a whole bunch of features into the platform that have been highly requested by a lot of players. So I just pulled the list together in a short dot point, and I broke a few down below. So you'll be able to join Discord voice chats on the PlayStation 5 console as part of this update. If you already have done that on PlayStation 4, you need to reauthorize the app on PlayStation 5. But other than that, it's the same sort of thing. You'll be able to start or request a screen share from your friend's profile. So if you go into your mate's profile on PlayStation 5 and he's playing a game, you can actually just request to see what he's doing there. You can now join a game within the party chats. So if you're in a group, and you're having a chat and somebody jumps in the game, you can join via that. The Friends Who Play tile is being added. So now if you, say, bring up God of War on your home screen and you have 17 mates on your console and 3 of them have played it, those 3 will show up to say as, playing this game or played the game. You'll be also now able to manually upload select, images and videos to the PlayStation app. They added auto upload a while ago, but before then, there was nothing. So you can now go back through and manually trigger uploads to the PlayStation app for, images and videos that are under 3 minutes and not 4K. They're adding variable refresh support for 1440p monitors, which is something they hadn't had before. Had variable refresh for 1080 in that, but not for 1440. They're doing some game library enhancements, so you could be able to sort them, by platform. If you've got PS4 games in your list but you don't want to see them, you can remove them by hiding that category. A bunch of things like that. They're doing some more presets for multiplayer session preference, so you'll be able to tell people, I don't like this type of game, or if I'm joining a game, I want it to be muted straight away, stuff like that. They're doing some more PS4 to PS5 data migration on the console, so if you have PS4 data in the cloud, you won't have to log onto your PS4 to trigger it anymore. You can just download it straight to the console. There's, PS5 to PS5 data transfer options, screen reader improvements, so people with visibility issues, readability issues, we're able to have better visibility of the screen, and the one that makes me very, very happy, wireless updates for the controller. So as I said, the media gallery update is a big one. At the moment, you can copy them to USB, you can share them via some social media platforms. But going forward, if you want to send it to your phone, you can just upload it straight to the app from the console. The game library management, as I said, you'll be able to do it by platform, so you can see only PlayStation 5 or only PlayStation 4 games. I assume if you have PlayStation Plus Premium or Extra, whatever they're called here, you'll be able to see more PS1, PS2 games in there. So that's very, very cool. You'll also be able to apply filters for like PlayStation VR games. So if you have a PSVR or a PSVR 2 title in your library and it's buried under the other 100 games you have, you'll be able to say, show me only the PSVR titles, and it'll pop up. As I said, the big one for me is that the wireless controller updating is being added. So currently on Switch and Xbox, if the controller has an update, it'll just do it, wirelessly. It sends it to the controller. On the PlayStation 5, you have to plug the controller in via the cord, wait for it to update, and then unplug it. It's not obviously a huge thing if, you have a cord at hand. If you have to try and find a cord every time it has an update, it's a bit more of a problem. You will need to do one final update when the beta rolls out to the controller with a cord, basically to tell the controller it can now do wireless updates. But that's the last time you'll need the cord once this update rolls out. So it's very, very exciting stuff there. Obviously, there is no release date for the PlayStation update yet, because it is, as I said, launching out in beta form to selected users. They will provide feedback, technical reports, bug reports, if all that sort of stuff. Once those things have been, fixed up and crossed off the list, once it's ready to go, it'll roll out as it always does. Generally speaking, these beta periods go for about 2 to 3 months, anywhere in there. Gives PlayStation plenty of time to make sure everything is hunky-dory before they move on. Speaking of moving on, DC are finally getting rid of all their old movies and everything and starting brand new with what they call Chapter 1 of the DC Universe. So during the week, James Gunn stood up in front of the camera and presented the first, we'll call it a phase 1 or Chapter 1 of the DCU. So much like it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is the DC Universe. It's called Chapter 1, and the subtitle is Gods and Monsters. As part of this, there are 5 movies that were announced and 5 TV shows that were announced. So there are still some movies coming from the DCEU, so the extended universe. So we know that Shazam! Fury of the Gods is launching here in Australia on March 16. We got a new trailer for that last week for it. It looks very, very fun. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is set for a December 26 release. That was originally supposed to be December of 2022, but with the pandemic and the production costs, the studio made the decision to delay the movie an entire year in order to give the visual effects houses time to work on it without the need to have them working extremely long hours and paying copious amounts of overtime. So they've said, no, you take the time you need to do the work, and we'll worry about the release of the film. So that's very, very cool they're doing that. We also got confirmation that the Batman movie that starred Robert Pattinson is getting its sequel. It's called The Batman Part 2, and it will be launching on October 3rd or 23rd? October of 2025. So 2.5 years from now, the Batman will be back in cinemas with an entirely new film. We know that the director Matt Reeves is back again for this one, and that Robert Pattinson is back playing Bruce Wayne, aka the Batman. Beyond that, that's it. So we know the Batgirl movie was canned last year. There's been no word on the Flash movie that Ezra Miller was supposed to be in when he went batshit crazy. So no word on that, if that's still happening, if they're going to release it or not. Who knows? We do know that Michael Keaton was supposed to be in the Flash movie playing his version of Batman, but we'll have to wait and see what happens going forward. Moving on to the actual Chapter 1 content, we have 5 movies. So Superman Legacy is written by James Gunn. He obviously wrote the 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies for Marvel. He wrote the Suicide Squad and the Peacemaker content for DC. He also did the Guardians Holiday Special. So in the video, if you do watch it, I do have the video link in the story. It's at the bottom. He goes into slightly more detail on all of these. I'm just going to keep it very high level for it, because things are obviously going to change. This is going to be a Superman movie where he has been Superman for a bit, but he's still trying to balance that whole alien versus human part of his life. The Authority is an all-new movie where the Wildstorm characters will be joining the DC movieverse for the first time. It's basically it's not the Suicide Squad, but it's they're not heroes. So probably more like the Thunderbolts that Marvel is doing. This is sort of that style of it. The Brave and the Bold is an all-new Batman movie that will have Batman, or Bruce Wayne, and his son Damian Wayne as Robin. So this is actually inspired by the Grant Morrison comic series from a number of years ago. How inspired it is, we don't know. It could be a straight adaptation. It could be, loosely connected to the plot. We have to wait and see on that one. Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is based on the Tom King comic series that was done a number of years ago. Tom King's actually an Australian comic artist that does a lot of stuff for DC. And this is following the story where, we know that Kal-El, Superman, was sent to Earth. Kara Zor-El was supposed to, follow along, but her pod got knocked off into the Phantom Zone. She arrived many years after Kal-El in the main story. In this new version, she was trapped on a piece of Krypton, that blew up, and she sort of lived many years on this piece of Krypton. So she grew up on a broken piece of her home planet. Swamp Thing is the final movie. All we know that is what they've said. It'll investigate the dark origins of Swamp Thing. Now, there was an actual Swamp Thing TV series that launched on HBO Max like 2-3 years ago. It had one season. They didn't renew it. It didn't do well. This is nothing to do with that. This is not a retelling of that story. This is a new adaptation, but with the same character. What is interesting is that the Batman Part 2 and Brave and the Bold will be two completely different Batmen. We don't know who's going to be Batman in the Brave and the Bold. We don't know a release date for it. We know Superman Legacy will be in cinemas on July 11th, 2025. So we'll probably hear some casting news on the new Superman for that soon. But yeah, we don't know about the new Batman movie, but we have Superman in July and then The Batman in October in the same year. Moving into the world of TV shows, there is a new animated show called Creature Commandos that James Gunn has written all the episodes for. It is a 7-episode series. It's basically the Suicide Squad, but instead of humans, it's monsters. It's Weasel and a whole bunch of other critters. So it's still got Amanda Waller in it, taking over and leading everything. The Waller is a new TV show that will star Viola Davis, who played the character in both Suicide Squad movies, as well as it did a cameo in the Peacemaker TV show. This is actually written by Crystal Henry, who did the Watchmen show for HBO, and Jeremy Carver, who overtook Supernatural in the last 6 or 7 seasons. Booster Gold is a new show that has the character Booster Gold as the main character. He is somebody who lives in the future and decides to bring all the future tech he can back to our time to pass himself off as a great hero. But he's not hero material. He just wants the attention. He doesn't want to deal with anything else. Lanterns is a new TV show that stars Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, so the Green Lanterns. It was described by Gunn as a what's that series where they keep having new characters, like a True Detective style thing, but with Green Lanterns. It will be set on Earth, so it's not going to be Green Lanterns patrolling the galaxy, but it is set here. And then the last show is Paradise Lost, which is set in Themyscira, home of Wonder Woman and the Amazons. They're aiming that to be a very political show. Something that we learned after all these announcements is that if you're cast in the Authority, or you're cast as Supergirl for the movie, part of the requirement is that you will appear in the TV shows. This is not going to be two separate things. This is going to be what Marvel are doing with their Disney Plus shows, is that they'll have the feature movies, and then they'll have TV shows where they can either introduce new characters or expand on characters from the movies and do something for their own there. Obviously, we're still years away from any of this stuff hitting the screens. We know Creature Commandos is animated. Everything else is meant to be live action. The full breakdown on who's in what, we don't know, because they've not said anything. All we know is, this is the lineup for now. So we've got a few what they call DC EU. So that is Shazam, Aquaman, and The Batman. So they're the extended universe, the what ifs, if you will. And then the DCU is the new stuff that James Gunn and Peter Safran are overseeing. Yeah, it looks like it'll be a fun lineup of content. The fact that they're starting it to be a giant connected world should be good. Whereas DC originally, when they kicked off their DCEU, they didn't have that plan and they couldn't quite stick it. So Zack Snyder did Man of Steel, and then they did Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. They sort of pivoted to try and insert stuff into that for the new the new connected universe. It didn't really land the way they were hoping it would. Marvel did the same thing. They didn't set out to create a cinematic universe when they did Iron Man, but they threw that cameo in of Sam Jackson as Nick Fury, and got people's attention. So Marvel were able to build on that to create the universe, whereas DC couldn't. So obviously they're rebooting and trying again. Moving away from the world of movies, we're going to jump into the world of games again, and we're going to talk about the Xbox Games with Gold available for February. So, like the last couple of months, it's only got 2 games in it, and this is starting to become a bit of an insult. Not because I'm demanding that I want 4 games, but the service has lost its value. So, in September they did the last release of the Xbox 360 games. After that, they did no more. So October through to now, they've only been providing 2 games a month. So the games with gold available for February, that came out the other day, is For the King, which is available for the full month of February. And the game that's available starting on the 16th of February and runs through to the middle of March is Guts and Goals, which is sort of a 2D pixelated soccer type experience. So there are still games available. Still a game available from the January collection that'll be available up until the end of the 15th of February. So you still have some time to get that one. But again, it's only 2 titles. Where we used to have 4 titles. And they took away the Xbox 360, and then the next month it was just 2. And I gave them a bit of leeway because I thought maybe they're just not sure what games to include or what happened, whatever happens to be. But no, they've just apparently given up on it. So they're still charging the same amount of money, but the value that players are getting back is not there. Obviously, if you're paying for Game Pass Ultimate, you're getting games with gold as part of it and the Game Pass experience. But if you're just paying for Xbox Live Gold, and you're doing it for the free games, you're still paying the $12 a month that it is, but you're getting 50% less value than you were 6 months ago. Obviously, this is a first world problem. It's not a huge thing. Some people won't care at all. Maybe they only play 2 or 3 games a month and they're happy with just getting the 2. I honestly think they need to bring a 3rd game in. They need to bolster the value a little bit again. Who knows if they will do that. They've been making the right sort of decisions, Xbox have for a while now, but this time, they appear to have just sort of given up on it. Looking at the PlayStation lineup for February, this one is actually quite big because there are 4 games in it. So available starting February 7th, usually around 7 p.m. on that day, PlayStation fans will get Mafia Definitive Edition for PlayStation 4. That is the remake of the original Mafia that came out a couple of years ago. And then for both PS4 and PS5, we'll see Oli Oli World, Evil Dead the game, and Destiny 2. I can't remember the subtitle for that one. Beyond Light. I was going to say Light Jumper. That was not it. So yeah, Destiny 2, Oli Oli World, and Evil Dead are both PS4 and PS5 offers. So if you have a PlayStation 5, you can take full advantage of all 3 games. If you have a PlayStation 4, you can still play those games. Obviously, you can play Mafia Definitive Edition on your PS5 if you have it, but it won't take full advantage of the console. Because these games always go out on the first Tuesday of the month, unless the first Tuesday of the month is the first day of the month. There's still a few days left where you could pick up the January games, which include Axiom Verge 2, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and Fallout 76. So there's still a fair bit of time for those ones. And the January lineup was stacked. It was very great. This one, if you're a Destiny fan, you probably already have Beyond Light. But Oli Oli World, Mafia, and Evil Dead are all fun games to enjoy as well. Moving on from there, we're going to talk about the games that are coming out in February as a whole. So we already started to see a few of these games come out because we're on the third day of the month, but this is the sort of the big titles coming to all platforms in February. So Rhythm Sprout launched on the 1st for all platforms. It is a rhythm-based hack and slash sort of thing. It looks very fun. It's all based on hitting things to the beat. Yesterday saw the release of Chef Life, a restaurant simulator for all platforms, and Deliver Us Mars released for everything but Switch yesterday as well. We will have a review up for that over the next few days. Fashion Police Squad launched last year on PC. That came out yesterday for all consoles. That is a first-person shooter where shooting is not you killing people, but rather, re-accessorizing them, giving them more, fashion in their life. So it's not about, killing everyone, but it's, giving them the right look. Today saw the release of Helvetii, which is a, 2D side-scroller for both Switch, PS4, and PC. We also got the release on PC and PlayStation for Joe the Wanderer and the Enigmatic Adventure. I get serious sort of, Uncharted Indiana Jones vibes from this one, but with like a knack style platformer mixed in. I think it looks, pretty beautiful. I don't know how it plays gameplay wise. I just think it looks great. But yeah, so if you have an interest in platformers, this is probably one to check out on PlayStation and PC. Next week, we will see the release of Hogwarts Legacy for PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S. The game is coming to Xbox One and PS4 in April, and then in July for Switch. The week after, we will see the release of Blanc for Switch and PC. We will have a review for that one up as well soon. Wanted Dead will also release on the 14th for all platforms but Switch. This is actually being led by some of the team that did, some of the guys that were in the team that did Dead or Alive and Ninja Gaiden for Team Ninja. So expect some very, very fast-paced combat on that one. We will have a review for that one as well. On the 15th, we'll see Returnal come to PC, a previously PlayStation 5 exclusive title. It's getting its PC release, as Sony are doing more and more. On the 16th, Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line. Some people call it Theat Rhythm, because, rhythm is one word, Theat is another. But that is coming to Switch and PlayStation 4. That game also has a demo available now, and all progress from the demo will transfer across to the full title. On the 17th, Labyrinth of Galleria, The Moon Society will see its release on Switch, PC, and PlayStation platforms. As a NIS title, these tend to release over a period of a couple of weeks. It comes out a bit earlier in the month in America and Europe, but we get it on the 17th. Also on the 17th, we'll finally see the release of The Settlers' New Allies. This was due to release in March of last year, and then it got delayed just a couple of weeks beforehand, and it got pushed back to an unknown date and was dated at the end of last year for now. The 17th will also see the release of Wild Hearts for PC, Xbox Series X and S, and PlayStation 5. It is a Monster Hunter type game where building contraptions to help you battle monsters is key. Finally, on the 17th, we'll also see the release of Tales of Symphonia Remastered for Switch, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4. Unfortunately, it's not a remaster of the GameCube version, which ran at 60 frames a second. It is a remaster of the PS3 version, which itself was a remaster of the PS2 version, which all ran at 30 frames a second. So that's there as well. On the 21st, we will see Atomic Heart come to all platforms but Switch. This is a unique first-person shooter set in a alternate timeline where Soviet Russia was creating artificial intelligence for robots to do manual labor instead of humans. And of course, as is always the case with that, something went wrong. The 21st will also see the release of Like a Dragon Ishin for all platforms but Switch. This is the Yakuza series. They rebranded it in the West last year during the Tokyo Game Show stream they had. So in Japan, the series has always been called Like a Dragon. Then in the West they called it Yakuza. So a number of years ago, when Yakuza Like a Dragon released, that was their sort of gateway point to changing the names. So going forward, all the titles will be called Like a Dragon and then subtitle. So that is coming out on the 21st. The 22nd will see the release of Digimon Next Order for both Switch and PC. This is a upscaled version of a previously released title. It's just coming to more platforms. On the 22nd, we'll also see the release of PlayStation VR 2. I have a full separate story up for all the launch window titles. So that includes some of the games coming out on the day of, so like Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7's VR mode, and more. But then all the games sort of coming out over the next sort of 4 weeks after that as well are in there. On the 23rd, we'll see the release of Blood Bowl 3 for all platforms but Switch. This is a Warcraft-esque version of Madden. It's just more tactical than anything, but it's that type of sport paired with Dungeons and Dragons. Also on the 23rd, we'll see the release of Company of Heroes 3 on PC. Was again supposed to be released in November of last year. They delayed it for more polish. It is also coming to consoles later in the year. The 23rd will also see the release of Grim Guardians Demon Purge for all platforms. This is an Inti Creates title, so there will be a lot of game to enjoy if you're into the pixel style, like 2D side scroller. Let me jump ahead into the actual thing. So it's very much like all that Inti Creates have been doing with their Castlevania, not Castlevania, Blood of the Moon, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it looks a lot like that sort of style. I think it looks great. It is, as I said, coming to all the platforms on that day. So if you do want to check it out, you will have plenty of places to choose to do it. The 23rd will see the release of Sons of the Forest on PC. This is a survival game. It is very much more than that, and I won't get into it because it is a little, gory at times. The day after that, we'll see the complete opposite in terms of the visual spectrum, and that is Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. They released a trailer today where we got new information on some of the mini games that will be available to play. The same day, we'll also see the release of Octopath Traveler 2 for Switch, PC, and both PlayStation platforms. Of course, the first game originally launched as a Switch exclusive, and then it eventually got ported to every other platform because it's Square Enix and they can't help themselves. Destiny 2 Lightfall is going to be the last game of the month. It's technically not a game, it's an expansion. It is set to launch on the 28th, but it may also launch on the 1st. So the release timings haven't been confirmed for it. The 28th is what is dated, so we might see it, 6 a.m. on the 28th. We might see it at 6 p.m. We don't know yet. If they go for, say, a 9 a.m. Los Angeles time on the 28th, that would make it like 3 a.m. Sydney time on the March the 1st. So this one is sort of straddling that date line. We just don't know where it's falling at this point. In terms of the games coming out next week, the only game that it is available is Hogwarts Legacy, as I said, for PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S. We will have a review for that one as well. It should be up before the game is out, but the code for that one only arrived recently, so we may be a little delayed on it. With all that said and done, that brings us to the end of the show. As I said, we do record these every Friday at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and we do try and offer a balanced variety of news stories from the week. Obviously, some weeks we're going to have hardly any news. Some weeks we'll have a lot more news. It's just the way that it depends on how the week goes. Obviously, there is a story that came out during the week that Nintendo and PlayStation and Xbox were not going to be at E3. If you read that and you started freaking out, don't freak out. It's bullshit reporting, and I don't mean that the facts aren't true. I mean it's a bullshit story that IGN have written in a way as to generate controversy and get people to come to their site. Xbox have not been a part of E3 since 2018. In 2017, they hosted their conference, and they had some media exclusive stuff in the Microsoft Theatre, which is across the road from the convention center, but they had a booth on the floor in the convention center. 2018, they did nothing in the convention center. It was all external. Right? In 2019, PlayStation dropped out of the show entirely. They were not involved in the show. They didn't have a presentation as part of the show. They just said, screw it, we're going to do things our own way. So they've not been involved for a number of years. So jumping up and saying, oh, these guys aren't going to be there. It's like, yeah, they've not been there for a number of years. That's not news. Nintendo not being there is obviously the news story. The thing is, though, that's not confirmed, right? This is IGN reporting on what they've been told. But nobody from Nintendo has said we're not going to be at E3, or we will be at E3. None of that has been announced yet. Given that Nintendo probably don't have a lot more after Zelda for the Switch, it is highly likely they may not be there. If they are, it might just be business stuff only, instead of open to the public stuff. But that's, again, we don't know this. Sensational reporting for the sake of being sensational is one of the things that I despise, and it's one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of IGN lately. Is because everything they do generate is designed to generate interaction, because the more people they have visit their site, the more money they make on ads. Last year, for example, they reviewed Multiverses. The game is technically still in a beta state; it hasn't fully released yet, but they reviewed it. Right? They reviewed a beta. I don't know who reviews a beta and says this game's perfect, because a beta means things can change. So, yeah, if you saw that story, and obviously other people have popped up and said, yeah, no, we have confirmation of this as well. It's like, yeah, no, you don't have confirmation of shit. You have, somebody who's not the company saying something. That is why Maxi-Geek does not delve into rumors. I hear things all the time. I don't talk about them because, right, if somebody tells me the sky is green, it doesn't mean I'm going to run a story to say, hey, I got told the sky is green, because I don't know that to be true. I know that's what someone's told me. So, yeah, if you saw that story and you were worried, do not be concerned. That is not the case. In terms of other companies, not being at E3, Activision have not been at E3 since 2016. I think it was their last year. It was the last year there was a Skylanders game. Right, they had a big booth, and then they now do things in downtown Los Angeles, but in private venues. Right, Electronic Arts, they had a massive booth the year Battlefield Hardline came out, and then I think it was the year after that they dropped off completely and did EA Play across the street in front of the Microsoft Theatre, and then the few years after that they hosted it over in Hollywood. So even though EA are not at E3, they still do things during that week. So Devolver have never been at E3. They do everything at, they generally book a parking lot or a venue off-site and do things on their own terms in their own little space. So yeah, just because a company says they're not at E3 doesn't mean they won't be around. We know Xbox are planning on having a summer showcase. They've already confirmed it will be in Los Angeles. They've not confirmed the dates of it, but given that E3 is, is going to bring people in from around the world, we will be there for it. There is a fair chance they'll be doing it at the same sort of time frame that they have in the years past. So they'll be around that week. They'll be having news. They'll have, gameplay reveals, all that sort of stuff. They just won't be connected to the show, as they haven't been for a number of years now. So yeah, I know that was ranty, but if you see that sort of stuff, don't read it and take it as gospel, because it's not until the company that is actually talking about it confirms or denies it, right? Because again, they haven't said, hey, we got told by Nintendo they're not going to be there. They got told by somebody who said they know, right? That's a different thing. All right, I'll leave that alone. But yeah, we'll be back next Friday for another episode of the Maxi-Geek Show, where we will talk through whatever news of the week happens to be. And then we'll be back on Tuesday for the next episode in our Splinter series, where we're finally moving on to the second game, having beaten the first game the other day. And that is, of course, Pandora Tomorrow. This is the one that people probably know the name of the most because of that useless, the thing is, if, he calls up and says Pandora Tomorrow, the bomb gets delayed another day. But it's also the one that, people don't like the most. So the original Splinter Cell did a lot, sort of set the foundation. Chaos Theory, which is the third one, refined everything. And then they kind of went a little weird with Double Agent and not Conviction. No, Double Agent. They went weird with that one, sorry. And then Conviction, they sort of relaunched it and, made it a bit more Jack Bowery. People liked it, but it wasn't really Splinter Cell, so they tried to go back with Blacklist and, they recast the lead and everything. It just didn't really work. But, yeah, we'll be starting on game number 2 on Tuesday for that one. And then we're looking to start up a second series on Sundays, but we'll let you know how we go with that one. But otherwise, we'll be back on Tuesday for Splinter series, then back on Friday for more Maxi-Geek. Until we see you online again next time, though, happy gaming.